Welcome to M&G Agency Live, your go-to podcast for creativity, insights, and now a spotlight on the amazing businesses we work with.
This series is all about celebrating the people behind the brands, diving into their stories, achievements, and what makes them tick.
From the inspiring journeys to future plans, we'll be shining a light on the local businesses driving our community.
So, whether you're here for marketing tips, entrepreneurial insights, or just curious about what goes on in the world of business, you're in the right place.
Shall we get into it then?
Oh, heck yes.
Okay, welcome to the end of Series 2, Amy. Can you believe that?
So sad.
This is the grand finale of Series 2 of M&G Agency Live, Meet the Client. What a roller coaster it has been, with some incredible clients along the way. So many interesting stories. And today the client is, well, it's us.
Yes, that's right. We are turning the mic on our very own managing director, Mike Wilson. From a science student who realised petri dishes weren't his calling, to sweeping warehouse floors in Glasgow, to running a growing full-service marketing agency. Mike's journey is anything but ordinary. Welcome back to the podcast, Mike.
It's nice to be here.
Hello.
Yeah, welcome back. I feel, Amy, this is where we're going to maybe get a critique. So come on, Mike, what's your thoughts been on the second series of the podcast?
Can you get any better?
Oh.
Wow, you can come back again.
We'll take that.
That was a question.
Maybe.
I find it really interesting. We've got to get to know a lot of our clients, but also what they do in their spare time, their whole backstory.
Exactly.
It's been pretty interesting. It's been really good. And today, Mike, we thought we'd end with a bang. It's your turn.
It is indeed. Looking forward to it.
So, Mike, you've been part of a team which has led multi-million-pound operations, navigated business turnarounds. You've even taken a detour into drug rehabilitation volunteering in Reading. This episode will cover it all, including that famous scout skating incident. What?
Yeah, what's that? I'm intrigued.
Shall we do this?
Yes, let's get into it.
Let's do it.
Yeah, so let's start from the start. Mike, you originally studied biological sciences. What made you pivot away from science and into more people-focused work?
Yeah, I loved the science in terms of the microbiology at uni, and I liked the logic of it, and I liked the fact there was facts that you were dealing with. But as you say, you kind of get to the end of that and you think, work-wise, you're looking into a petri dish and down a microscope for the rest of your life. And I thought, I just can't see myself doing that. So definitely kind of needed to do something with people, and decided that therefore I had to look elsewhere as to what I was going to do next.
This is really interesting already, because I had no idea you did that.
I was thinking the same thing.
I'm also trying to picture Mike as a mad scientist.
In a lab
I can't
coat.
see. Yeah, in a lab.
I still have my lab coat, and I wore it at a 50th birthday last year, or this year, dressed as Doc from Back to the Future.
Oh, brilliant. Well, hey, at least it's still getting put to good use.
Yes.
So talk to us about your volunteering stint. You spent time volunteering in a drug rehab centre. What did that experience teach you about life and work and everything?
Yeah, so it was an attempt to do something completely different and just put myself out of my comfort zone, I suppose, rather than just go and look for a job. So spent a year living on site in a drug rehabilitation centre just outside of Reading. And an amazing experience, both, I think, in terms of meeting all sorts of different types of people. There's probably a stereotype on what types of people are drug addicts, but you really got an amazing insight into the fact that it could really happen to anybody. And yeah, just living on site as well. It was all guys, so you were kind of with them 24/7, and just really got to know them and their stories, which were amazing. And it is an odd one to then lead into that's why I'm in business, but there's definitely an element of one of the sort of, I suppose, factors was that a lot of them losing their jobs had been a key part of a downward spiral into the abuse that then they got into. So there was definitely an element of, that was a common thing amongst, regardless of where they'd come from or who they were. That was one of the many sort of factors that did. So it got me thinking of kind of going into some sort of business and trying to kind of provide some kind of employment for people. So it was it's an interesting. It was a real pivot rather than continuing with science.
I imagine you would learn so much from doing something like that. But also, did you find it rewarding? Were you able to kind of change people's lives and take them on a new path?
The programme did. I don't think I did. I was working on the estate. It was a big sort of manor estate on the outskirts of Reading, and I worked alongside. But I think what was interesting was that whole, a lot of them had been in and out of prison, so they struggled to some extent with me working alongside them because that's not what happened in prison. You were just watched while you worked.
Okay.
So the value was actually in just saying, I'm a normal human being too.
Yeah.
And, you're valuable even though you've been in a bad place, and we can get you out of this. So the programme was a kind of 1.5-year programme. But yeah, I could do a separate podcast. The different types of people, where there were people who'd been very successful, people who'd always been in trouble, and there was a real mix in between. So it was just treating them as individuals and not their past. Very quickly, I was given the option to look at their records, and I decided not to because I didn't want to be influenced by their past. So I definitely just said, I'll just meet them as I meet them as individuals, and that's how I'll treat them. So, yeah, that was part of my role, I suppose.
Okay.
But definitely, as I say, and you'll come on to, I think, putting yourself into situations that are out with your comfort zones, you learn so much about yourself at the end of the day rather than, how much value do you give? Who knows? I was weeding and I was hoeing and I was digging up with the rest of them. But but yeah, I think the value is on you learn about yourself and you learn about the fact that life's tough. Actually.
Okay.
So
that's an interesting insight into your early career.
Yeah, definitely. So from volunteering work, you then got into the business side of things. So can you tell us about joining the family business at William Wilson and why Glasgow was such a formative chapter for you?
Yeah, so as I say, I kind of thought this notion of going into some sort of business. So I wrote to my father and said, I said I'd never go into the business because there was already other family members in the business.
Okay.
I said, but why don't I feel I should try the family business first.
And your father being the big boss, is that right?
Yeah, him and his brother were both. So they said, okay, this is what you said you'd never do. So we're going to shove you down to Glasgow and see if you can last there. So absolutely the right thing to do in terms of, you mentioned that sort of starting from the bottom up. And I think the real advantage was, so I was fourth generation in the business. It was distributing plumbing, heating and electrical supplies across Scotland and the north of England. And the real advantage of just being in Glasgow, the Glasgow people were, I wasn't given any privileges. It really didn't matter. And, I had to learn the same way as everybody else did. And I always say, I learnt my trade in Glasgow because I did all the things that were there. So, did start off literally sweeping the floors. And then worked my way up to warehouse manager, showroom manager, and then branch manager. And I think what it teaches you is just do whatever needs done. Yeah. And actually, I'm a great believer in the way of learning something is to start at the bottom and just you'll learn things as you go on. And I think the Glasgow people as well, they're great fun, made lots of friends, but there was just no quarter given in the sense that I was treated like anybody else. And that was perfect for me.
Yeah, I wanted to ask that. So were you actually treated like everyone else? Come on, Mike, family business, your dad's the boss.
100%. I mean, down to, probably things I shouldn't have been doing or probably, and again, I think, all credit to the team down there. There was genuinely, there wasn't a kind of, there wasn't even a kind of reticence to, or a feeling that I wasn't just part of the team. And again, I think that's because, I'm a great believer, and you meet people where you find them. And if that was sweeping the floors and putting the stock away, then I did the same as everyone else. So there wasn't I wasn't even pretending to be anything like that. And learning, it's that was a completely new business to me. And, I do think I learnt my trade. And it, subsequently that's useful because you've done what you're asking other people to do.
You've got your hands dirty. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
From your experience there, what did you learn through the process of turning around a loss-making branch in Glasgow? Yeah,
so that was eventually got the opportunity to take on the branch in Glasgow. So and it was losing a fair bit of money. And I think that was a massive learning curve, a steep learning curve in terms of suddenly you're in charge of how you how you make this whole thing work.
Yeah.
And I think the lessons would be that business can be tough, and it's not just all it's good when it's good, but when it's bad, it's really difficult. And managing everything for that to turn that business around. I suppose the biggest thing was, we had to downsize to start with. So the actual angst of making people redundant, it's the first time I had to do that. And bearing in mind, I'd kind of gone in with a kind of vision of that steady employment to then very quickly have to say to people, I'm sorry, we don't have a job for you. That was really hard. And I think then it's just how you then motivate the rest of the team to say, okay, we've hopefully done the hard work of getting rid of people. How do we start to build this back up? And I think there's a massive piece on how you then, the teamwork that is needed to take a business from a loss-making situation into a profitable situation. So lots of highs and lows, lots of self-doubt. That's the bit that it's very lonely when you're in charge. I mean, I did have people at a regional and a head office level, but ultimately it was up to me. Yeah. And sitting in the warehouse thinking, is this the right thing to do? Or is this the right time to do things? Can we afford it? All those kind of things that you kind of have to deal with. But again, huge credit to the team that I had down there. You start to get the little wins and you celebrate those. You then get setbacks. That always happens. You think, oh, this is going great, and then something comes and kicks you in the teeth.
Changes it.
But ultimately, you get somewhere. Again, I think it's the rewards of actually seeing. We got back into profit, and there was definitely an element of the team felt that hopefully as much as I did.
And how long did that take, Mike, to go from that underperforming business through to being back in the green?
Yeah, I think we were 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
We were broken into at one point and a whole pile of stock stolen. So that was a real kick in the teeth.
What a setback.
Because that came straight off your bottom line.
Yeah.
But I think, it was 2 or 3 years to get it back and functioning correctly. So, yeah.
Impressive. Though.
So you went from there to then, am I right, to managing the sales team across the Central Belt. So it was a regional move. How did that regional role broaden your outlook? How did that help and change and shape your career, would you say?
To be honest, it was a bit of a breather because it was an established team. There weren't any issues. They knew what they were doing, and I was just kind of caretaking them. So having had all the angst of turning the branch around, then it was kind of, actually, this is quite nice. I can just do a job.
Put your feet up.
But it's also why I didn't last very long at it, because I got itchy feet.
Oh, did you?
To go on to something else. So, but yeah, it was a good team. Just Central Belt, and I suppose a bit of travelling around there, visiting plumbers on building sites in the freezing cold. But that's maybe one other reason why I decided to do something else.
Something else. Yeah, so I mean, that's your hands-on business experience kind of covered. So you then went and stepped out to complete an MBA. What did formal study add to your hands-on experience that you've already had?
Yeah, I always say it kind of just gave me language and structure around what I'd been doing anyway. So it was a kind of, that's what that's about. Or, so I'd kind of done it by having to do it. And then the studies kind of showed me just that's what you call it. Or, just that. Also some, skills and some toolkits that you then take on. It wasn't that I was fully fledged at that stage.
Yeah.
So it was a mixture of, actually, I suppose it's cart before the horse, a wee bit of doing it and then studying it. Yeah. So that was a kind of, that ticks. But then there's definitely an element of other skills that I then moved on with. Yeah. So it was great. And I took a full year out. We had 100 people in the course and we had 33 different nationalities. So that was another real benefit of studying, is that internationalization piece. I can't even say it.
Internationalization.
Well done, Amy. Thank you very much.
I'm not going to attempt it.
No. So, and again, great set of people from all over the world that were studying. So it was good fun.
So you stepped away from the family business and you spent some time at Morrison Construction and Anglian Water. What was that like? And tell us about some of the skills that this helped you develop during that time.
Yeah, again, it was like just a different industry, seeing a different industry in action. I think, again, what's interesting is you see the differences between different industries, but you also see the similarities in terms of what makes things tick. I think experience of a larger organisation was also good for me. They had separate divisions, some of them international, and it was actually, how do you align all those different divisions within the business to a common goal? It was a time when Anglian Water took over Morrison's. So that was quite interesting in terms of that, being part of that. Wasn't involved in that in terms of, it was a I was being done to in terms of a takeover rather than driving that. But it was interesting to see how that was done, and I suppose what was good and what was bad about that. But there was definitely an element of very disparate parts of the business, and actually how do you get that commonality of vision and goal, so that people are aligned even though they're doing very different things. So we had a development arm that developed construction projects. We had a building arm, effectively, with an asset management arm, and then we had the Anglia Water stuff, which was running water in the southeast of England.
Okay.
So, it's all that, how do you make all those things still have a common goal in terms of, and they did that very well. So that was very useful.
Okay.
Cool. So you're then moving on again, and we're back to William Wilson, which is fun, but in a bigger role, as it seems. So you came back to William Wilson as commercial director. What were the key responsibilities you took on in that new role?
Yeah, it sounds like I moved around a lot, but
no,
it wasn't that much.
You come creeping back, knocking on your dad's door.
Yeah, no,
with your tail between
I
your
want
legs.
something bigger, Dad.
No, they came to me, which was quite nice.
You were headhunted.
They came to me and said, "Are you coming back or not?" So yeah, I mean, the first thing it meant a move back up to Aberdeen.
Okay.
So which wasn't an easy decision because I loved living in Glasgow.
Yeah.
I'd left Bankery at 17 because it was too small. And thought it was the worst place in the world. You come back at 35 with 3 kids in tow and you think, this is a great place.
It's a nice place,
yeah.
So that was a kind of first main decision was, am I coming back? Because if I came back, that had to be it. You can't kind of move around forever. And yeah, I would add, I'm now a fully reintegrated Aberdonian, passionate about the North East, because I genuinely think it is one of the best places to live in the world, and I think we all know that. But,
I'd agree, yeah.
But yeah, so work-wise, joined the senior management team at William Wilson's again, and it was, I had the role of managing a variety of functions. It was purchasing, kind of quality trading, and for the first time, I got to do some marketing. I was in charge of the marketing department.
Yeah.
Talking our language now.
Okay, we can see where this is all leading. I think it's quite obvious. So that business was sold at its peak. What was it like staying on and preserving its identity through that whole transition?
Yeah, I think we were kind of unusual. I think a lot of acquisitions happen because businesses are in trouble. We were acquired because actually we were doing really well.
Okay.
And, we were a successful and profitable business. So that meant we had a bit of power, I suppose, to say what we wanted to happen post-acquisition. And it was around maintaining our autonomy. As a management team. We maintained our brand identity and how we did things. So, there were some synergies in terms of buying power and back office functions, but anything that was customer focused remained as Willie Wilson's, and the team stayed the same. So I think it's not, as I say, a lot of acquisitions are more distressed than we were. And at one point in the whole group that we were part of, we were the most profitable part in the whole of Europe at one point.
Good.
So they kind of did leave us alone, and they very much just came up and said, keep doing what you're doing. It's very good. And it was a really strong management team, really good, well-run business. It was a lot of fun, a lot of challenges within the detail, but genuinely it was £100 million, 500 people, made some money, and it was a good, solid business.
You must have learned a lot from your time there.
Yeah. Again, it's that element of, I suppose, there's a wee bit of everything you've done up to that point all adds to it, and then you always learn more, and definitely, I think people is what you learn from, and situations, and I think it's that element of, particularly in a bad situation, it's always that breath of, okay, we can deal with this, how should we deal with this, so I think there's definitely that.
Did you ever feel extra pressure because it is a family business? Was there ever any moments where you really messed up and you had to tell your father that you've kind of...
There were lots of moments I really messed up, but no, because it wasn't, he was kind of chairman at that point, and the management team was only one other family member on that, so it wasn't as... it wasn't like you were going home with it every night to members of the family.
Yeah, okay.
But I swear I would say it was just a well-run business. So that was more of the learning than it necessarily. I think there are the family challenges, obviously, in terms of succession and in any business. And I think what was interesting, I remember speaking to a plumber about, he was thinking about taking his son on, to his business. So they were a kind of small 4 or 5 people business. And I remember saying to him, just do it.
Mm-hmm.
If you're running the business, what's wrong with taking your son on? Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Exactly.
If he's not good at it, then get rid of him. That's the key thing. And I always used to say that, going back to my Glasgow days, they hadn't got rid of me yet, so I must be doing okay.
And there's a sign there, yeah.
Yeah. But there was one famous, it was our HR manager at one point said to me, he said, Mike, you're actually really valuable to this business. And I said, yes, I am. As if you're not just here because you're the boss's son.
They were quite surprised by that.
They were. It was this tone that was like, I thought you just got a job because you were the boss's son. But again, I think my advice to anyone entering a family business is, again, earn your stripes.
Mm-hmm.
Understand your business. Don't take it for granted.
Yeah.
Find out what it's about. Find out how you can be useful rather than that expectation, if you like, which will just get you nowhere.
Okay, so we'll get on to M&G shortly, but tell us what you like to do when you're not at work. We know you're involved in the Scouts.
I am involved in the Scouts, yeah. No, absolutely. So I volunteer with the First Bankery Scout Group.
Yeah.
And it's good because as well as teaching the kids sort of skills for life is the slogan the Scout Association have.
Yeah.
It's also a great way of me keeping active. There's things you do with the Scouts that I wouldn't, canoeing, cycling, paddleboarding, all that kind of stuff, camping. I was going to tell a story. Recently, we were caving. And there was a series of caves that were concrete tubes, effectively, or pipes. And that was fine. You go in, and then there's this one that is 37.5 centimetres diameter tube. If you think about that, it's about 2 rulers.
That's just over a ruler, isn't it? 30 centimetres. And okay, wow.
So it was like, can I get through there? And it was interesting because the chap running it said, you will panic halfway through, but just steady your breathing. You will get through it. Whatever.
I feel anxious just thinking
And that's
about
exactly what happened. And I remember being in the middle of the tube thinking, I wouldn't be doing this if I wasn't involved with a bunch of kids.
It must also be pretty worrying that as a Scout leader, you're getting a group of Scouts safely through that cave system as well.
Especially when some of them are bigger than you, but they're also more flexible.
Yeah, and less scared probably.
Yeah,
as well.
less scared.
Like
yeah, exactly. They all thought it was great.
Yeah.
So,
were you a Scout as a kid?
I was. There weren't beavers when I was a kid, but I was a cub and a Scout. And then I've always been involved. I did it in Glasgow, did it in Edinburgh when I was there studying, and didn't do it in Reading, actually. But yeah, it's always, I just think it's such a great organisation for boys and girls to get that outdoor experience and just try things out that they maybe wouldn't do
skateboarding
normally. Like skateboarding, yeah, I did. I also tried the skateboarding. That was at Transition Extreme, and I was very proud of the fact that I can't skateboard, and I'm not even going to claim, but I got down the street. Apparently,
there we go.
So the kids said, "Oh, you got down the street," but yeah, it wasn't pretty, and it wasn't. But I didn't fall off. So that's a good sign.
I think
absolutely
that Scouting seems to suit you because you're very outdoorsy. Yeah. You're always up a Munro every other weekend, and
that's my other challenge at the moment is I'm trying to do 60 Munros by the time I'm 60.
Really?
Oh, wow.
So I've got about 44.
Okay.
And I've got 3 years left, so it'll be challenging. I don't walk in the winter though, so it's a bit more challenging.
And I think with Munros, am I right in saying this, that they get more challenging because you tend to do all the ones that are near you.
Yeah, first.
And then suddenly you have to go further afield.
And
further up.
Yeah, and you get older.
Oof, yeah.
Right, okay. Right, so you went from, I love this, you were actually a Mearns Gill client. So you went from being the client to the owner. What inspired you to take the leap and just buy Mearns Gill? Yeah,
well, I stuck with after the acquisition, I stuck with it for 9 years because, as I say, it was a good, solid business. It was still challenging and all that. But I just had this back in my mind, wanting to own part of a business again. Mm-hmm. So I knew Alan and Tanya and the business here. And, I think what's interesting is it was almost just bravado of thinking, what was I, 45, something like that, and I'm thinking, well, why not have a go?
I could do it, yeah.
And it is interesting because I genuinely had no idea if my skills were transferable or not, because I suppose up to that point, everything had been in that kind of construction area, and marketing's completely different. So I think like any leap, you have to do a bit of research. I'm not saying you just blindly go into these things, but ultimately you've got to just decide to do it and try it out and be willing to fail, I suppose. So I went from a customer to owning the business in 2016. I think it helped, like Wilson's that Mearns Gill was a long-standing family business. I think that was an attraction both for the seller and for myself. And it's just that caretaking piece, of actually saying there's somebody here who, isn't just going to, get it on its feet and sell it. It's going to be a longer-term thing. So maybe some alignment from that perspective as well. But it's still a jump. Yeah. And I had good advisors about, looking at that. As I say, you have to research these things before you do them. But it's still that you've got to make that jump over to the next bit.
But you had the leadership skills, you'd had the sales experience of turning businesses around, and you obviously enjoyed the marketing part of these roles as well.
But you don't think of that. I mean, again, it's that self-doubt piece. You never ever think you've got those skill sets. Yeah. And I think it's that, I think for everybody out there, it's back yourself a little bit, because you know more than you think you know. I mean, there's a danger of being foolhardy, but I think if you really think about what you are good at and push yourself a little bit, you'll find, you actually are better than you think you are.
Okay.
Yeah, inspiring. So how did it feel to shift from, a large £105 million business to one with 11 people and a 1.5 million turnover?
Yeah, it definitely changes, because
your perspective a little bit.
You are going from that kind of larger business. I always say that what it meant was the highs were higher and the lows were lower, because you had less size to deal with, I suppose. Yeah. But I think for me, the biggest shift was being in an industry that I didn't know anything about. Yeah. It's completely different than in construction. So business needed a bit of TLC when I took it over, but it was all about kind of just listening to what the team here were doing, understanding what they were doing, why they were doing. There was a little bit of system stuff that we put in place, which I suppose was more in my comfort zone, because I kind of knew some of that. But entering a business that you actually know nothing about, and going back down to, previously it was because I'd done all the jobs, I felt I had at least a bit of credibility. Was you come into a business that not only haven't you done the jobs, but you can't do the jobs because you don't have this, I'm not creative, so I don't have the skill set. So that was a challenge. No, not a challenge, but it was just different in terms of, and I had to kind of, again, on the journey, getting ourselves back into a decent state was, again, a team effort, very much around everyone moving in the same direction and learning from each other and getting the business back into the successful state it is today.
And it must be working out. We're going to come to growth, but 11 people when you bought it, and what we're now, 22, 23, something like that. Yeah. So, right, was there anything that surprised you about stepping into the agency world?
I think what really surprised me was the talent. And it's very easy to say that, but I think, and it's not just our business, I think generally in the creative industries in Aberdeen, there are really talented people that are very, very creative. And I think actually creativity is undervalued and underutilized. I think a lot of businesses don't realize that if you can really allow some creative people to influence your business, it's beneficial in so many ways. And I think there's an interesting, I think those that do it see it, but I think there's plenty who don't actually realise how much value there is in it. And I think I am really passionate now, and I think that's the thing I've learnt the most, is that you give creative people the opportunity to be creative in your business, you really get results. And I'm not just saying that as a sales pitch. I think it's something, I didn't notice it until I was in it. We used Mearns Gill as a client, so we understood that there was creativity there, and they delivered results for us. But when you see the work that goes on behind the scenes, and the hard work people put into it, you've got a new respect for it in terms of what it is.
Helping clients tell their story as well. It's
absolutely
fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's why it's so much fun as well. But it is an awful lot of very a lot of talent that goes into that as well, which is good. Yeah, including podcasting, obviously.
There we go.
Of course, yes.
Here we are.
Thank you, Mike. I was waiting for that.
Yep. So Pete's kind of touched on this before, but obviously Mearns Gill has grown a lot in recent years. I've been here 2.5 years, and I feel like we've grown so much in that time, which has been so good. What do you think is driving this?
Again, I think it's just the talent we've got.
Yeah.
I think we get work because we've got good people in all parts of the business. And I think it is, our service offering is around the fact we have got subject matter experts in each of the service offerings that we give. So we're easy to access in terms of there's account management roles that get the relationships right, but fundamentally the work is done by people who know what they're doing and can have an influence on your marketing activities. So I think absolutely the growth is around having the right people with the right skill set. And yeah, a bit of alignment as to what we're all trying to do. You know, a bit of team. There's lots of teamwork, obviously, but it's the skill sets that are key to the growth.
Absolutely. And our fantastic clients that we've been speaking to on this series as well.
Absolutely.
You've spoken a lot about the importance of team dynamics, Mike, and I think we've spoken about it a lot on the podcast. How do you nurture that?
Yeah, it's a difficult question because I think the team nurtures the team. And I don't think it's... I do think team dynamics are everything. I suppose if I was to ask, I think you have to have transparency, you know, about how the business is doing. I think you have to give people autonomy. I think you have to be honest. I think you have to let people make mistakes. I think you also have to let people do what they're good at. You know, I think you see people that are, for whatever reason, put into roles that they either feel constrained on or they're not, you know, they don't enjoy. We've all got bits that we don't enjoy in the job, but I think fundamentally...
Not at all, Mike.
No. Love all of our work here.
I think it's great that we can be flexible, and sometimes people might slightly move and change between departments and things like that, because as you say, you want people to enjoy what they're doing, and sometimes we can adapt to that.
But also hard work. I think it's one of these things that, you know, it's very easy to paint a rosy picture, but I think you need people that are actually willing to put in the graft. And I think, you know, it's that, you know, the harder I work, the more lucky I get. And I think you definitely, the team dynamics, we're very lucky that there's a hard working attitude here. I think there's also a hard playing attitude here, which is good. And I think you do need that as well. You need to get on, you need to have some fun together. But I think often the actual realities of business's hard work is sometimes missed, and I think you do have to grind it out. So that doesn't sound too depressing.
No, you do.
And I think we've got the balance so well here because we really have a great culture. It's a great working environment. Yeah. But as you say, Mike, we got to grind it out as well.
Yeah, exactly. So shared values and a clear mission are part of our DNA now. It was quite a collaborative approach to get to the point where we are now. Why do you feel it was so important that our values came from the team?
Yeah, again, so we've recently done a bit of work to kind of, to, I suppose, compartmentalise our values into something that's identifiable. Yeah. It's not the right word, but whereas I think those shared values already existed in terms of how we worked with clients and how we worked with each other. I think we had an idea of where we were going as a business. So as opposed to, you know, just some corporate words that you put up on a wall and, you know, they're supposed to just be an aspiration of what your values and beliefs are or your behaviours. I think it's much better to start from, you know, what actually are we exhibiting as a team and try and say, how do we put that into words? So it was very much I kind of almost felt we didn't need it because we lived it, but it was quite useful to say to everyone, well, actually, let's talk about this. What are our vision? What is our vision for the business? What are our values that we're sticking to? And there was a lot of commonality.
So much.
So it wasn't hard to come up with. And we've got now a couple of words for what our vision is and what our mission statement is and what our values is. But I like the fact it came, you know, it wasn't imposed on the business. The business just said, actually, this is what we're living today. And I suppose we could work it the other way. If you didn't have that right culture, you might have to discuss it in order to get there. Yeah. But I think we were really lucky that we already had that great culture, that great teamwork, and therefore it was just a little bit about let's formalise it into something that we can talk about.
And the sessions were great. They were so collaborative. They were great for the team. And I think everyone had a great understanding of what our own values and mission were. And, you know, we were able to use that for onboarding new staff and new talent when they come into the business. So they're then aware of the culture that they're walking into.
Yeah, and we all said the same thing as well, which was mad. Like we were just kind of all just saying the same thing, but maybe in a different way. And then it was very apparent we were all on the same boat. Yeah, which is good.
Right, Mike. So a big question for you: what's next for Mearns Gill?
So we're on a growth journey. I think both in Aberdeen and we've started off in Glasgow and beyond that, if we can. I think it's still being client focused, making sure that what we do works for a client, but that is where the growth is going to come from. I think as a mixture of, you know, existing clients and delivering for them, and then adding in some new clients and just growing the business from there. So I think it's more of the same, I suppose, is what I'm saying. And certainly, what I love about the business is there's no barriers. You know, if we want to do something and try something new, like, well, let's set up a podcast room, you know, then we just do it. And you know, there's definitely, I think, throughout this series of talking to some of our clients. There's definitely that thread, I would say, of saying, actually, manage your business well, but take some time to just, either do some challenging things or do some new things or take it forward rather than just stick with what you've got. So that's, who knows where we'll be in 10 years' time.
Yeah.
Watch this space.
I know.
Absolutely.
We'll be sitting here 10 years' time.
Yeah, we might be.
Hopefully.
Yeah, I hope so.
Right, let's move this on to, Amy, it's emotional. It's the last one. Oh, it's your favourite segment of the podcast. It's the last one of this series. Mike, are you ready for Inspiration Corner?
Can I just do a wee insight here?
Yeah.
I assumed that was a pre-recorded.
No, he does it every time.
I've just
I have
realised.
to listen to it every time.
We do it live.
There you go. So
Yep,
that's a wee
how-
insight for the listeners that actually Amy's had to suffer that every time rather than
We have other voices.
We have quite a few voices, but
I'll probably speak in my
I
own.
think I prefer all of the other ones apart from the Inspiration Corner one.
Okay, noted. Look, we might make adjustments for the next series,
I
Amy.
think so, yeah.
Mike, this is the point of the podcast where we ask our guests to maybe share a quote or a statement or something that has inspired them and stuck with them through their career. Something that you might want to share.
Well, I have thought about this because I've seen this question in advance. So I do need to make sure you've got some kind of censorship sound effect.
Okay,
Okay.
see if I can do this at the right
I
time.
wonder where that was going there.
So this was a female rally driver who we booked for a conference once, and she was a very strong lady, had actually spent her youth on the streets and then got herself up to being one of the few female rally drivers. And we were a bunch of guys in those days at the conference, and she was very struck by the fact that there were no women in the room.
Okay.
It's quite a while ago. But I really liked this quote from her, and she said there's three kinds of people in business. There are those that make it happen, there are those that watch it happen, and there are those that say, what the happened? And I think, which do you want to be? Do you want to be, and for me, you want to be somebody who makes it happen. You don't want to be somebody who watches it happen and then you get to the end of your life and you thought, oh, what happened there? I wish I'd done this. And you certainly, you want to. So for me, it's that constant reminder of be somebody who makes it happen. Whether that's, a large scale thing or a small scale thing, maybe it's, and it is, again, it's just those leaps of saying, I'd like to develop this client with this way. So make it happen. Or I'd like to save up and do something, then save your money and go and do it. So make it happen. Don't expect it to happen by default. You're in charge of making it happen. So that's my inspiration.
What I find really refreshing when I first started here as well, and maybe a little bit nervous, Mike, was I want to build a podcast room. It's here's the budget. And Mike just said, go make it happen. That's fine. And then I was questioning myself, is it right? But I think it is. I think we're doing good. I think that's a really nice kind of way to, I guess, work in business. And
bear in mind, I don't always say yes. I think the team would would testify to that in terms of that.
Yeah, you have to say that. And hey, Mike, thank you for taking that into Inspiration Corner, the last one of the series.
There we are.
Right, we are almost getting to the end of this episode, Mike. But before we finish up, we got to do a little bit of this or that.
I cannot take this seriously. I've just read them. I'm not going to be able to keep a straight face.
Mike, this is a quick fire round where we will throw some scenarios at you, and you're going to give us a very quick answer based on the first thing that comes to your mind. Amy, you can get us started.
Okay. Right. Fight one horse-sized seagull or 100 seagull-sized horses.
Ooh.
One horse-sized seagull. Bring him on. Bring him on.
Really?
Wow, okay.
They're vicious in Aberdeen, though.
Only speak in film quotes or only walk in slow motion for the rest of your life.
Is that a blue pill versus red pill question?
I think so. That was a film quote.
What does that mean?
You not watch The Matrix? There you go. Film quotes. Film quotes is the answer. Film quotes.
Oh, okay. Okay, this is my favourite one I've ever seen on all this podcast season.
Come on.
Okay, live in a submarine shaped like a croissant or a treehouse run by squirrels.
Oh,
That's an easy one. Treehouse run by squirrels. Squirrels are great.
Why not? Wear a kilt made out of lettuce or a suit made of balloons to every client meeting.
Suit made of balloons.
Okay.
I have worn some odd suits. I've also been a clown selling balloons, so it has to be the... Has to be the
Do
balloons.
that.
Okay.
Okay, be followed everywhere by dramatic theme music or a suspicious-looking mime.
Got to be dramatic theme music.
Yeah, that-
Everyone wants to walk into a room with some dramatic theme music, surely.
Replace your hands with giant spoons or your feet with squeaky dog toys.
I don't know where you get these. Giant spoons, because
Right.
then you can eat more.
And your dog would be going mental. Can you
True.
imagine?
Yeah, squeaky dog toys, yeah.
Have to pitch a campaign in song or interpretive dance.
I think it has to be song, because I can't dance.
I've seen your dance moves.
You'll
best.
testify to that.
I think we'll stop. We'll do one last one, I think,
Okay.
right? How about this to wrap this one up?
Yeah.
Only drink soup through a straw or eat toast with chopsticks.
Toast with chopsticks, surely.
Okay.
Yeah?
Very good. That was a
Yeah.
nice way to end.
Lovely.
So there we go. That is it. It's the finale of Series 2. Mike, thank you so much for being our final guest of this series where we met our clients.
Yep.
It's been really good to hear your story. One last question though. Are we ready for that mini bar, do you think?
Now, you see, I knew you were going to ask that question, so I have given it some thought, and I've
Right.
got an answer for you.
Okay.
So it's up to you two whether you accept this as your route
A proposition.
as your route to getting a minibar. So
Right.
genuinely, if you can achieve this,
Okay.
I will pay for a minibar in the podcast room,
Okay.
fully stocked for one time, and then you have to restock it yourselves.
Fair enough.
That makes sense.
Fair enough. Yeah,
So here's
that's fine.
the challenge.
fair.
Okay.
I was recently talking about being a mascot in terms of being inside a costume and being a mascot. Both as I've been twice. I've been a large yellow duck and I've been a large rabbit.
Right.
So my challenge is
Oh, no.
for you to get every member of the Mearns Gill team to offer their services to a charity of their choice,
Okay.
and to be a mascot at some event for some local charity. So, and once every member of the team has been a mascot, we've got photographic evidence of that.
Okay.
The minibar is yours. How does that sound?
There's a quick way we could win this because I've seen this event where they actually have a mascot race. Everyone
be
could just be
so
involved
fun.
at the same time. They have someone as Sonic the Hedgehog. Someone could be, I don't know, a rabbit,
Peppa
anything. Peppa Pig. Yeah, there was a sausage. Yes, Mike, we accept this challenge.
There you go.
This is doable. Let's do it.
Every member of the team, though, remember?
Wow.
Even by hope.
Well, she's already a mascot.
True. Okay, so if you'd like to hear more from the team or catch up on previous episodes, you'll find M&G Agency Life wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram at Mearns & Gill.
There we go. That's it. Hit subscribe to catch our next series as well. Make sure you're subscribed also. That way you'll know if another bonus episode lands. That's it.
Yeah.
You know we will be back soon. But until then, thanks for listening. And thank you, Mike.
Thank
You're
you,
welcome.
Mike.